Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at Venus and Mars making a sextile with Neptune this week. And at the end of the week, we're also looking at the planet Mercury making a square with Uranus. So it's a pretty dynamic week when you consider those two transits side by side. We've got a last quarter moon coming through this week. So there is a just that last quarter sense of completing something and starting to shed the weight of the entirety of the last moon cycle. So it's an interesting week, and I'm excited to take a look at it with all of you. A couple of things we're going to do this week. Tomorrow, we haven't done a chart demo for a while. So I think tomorrow I'll be bringing back a chart demonstration to show off some basic techniques that can be used. So I have a client with just a wonderful demonstration chart I'll be bringing in this week. At some point, we'll probably be doing one more another installment of our series on the Tao Te Ching. Of course, we've got Bhakti Wednesday coming up. And also, we're going to take more of an in-depth look at Mercury's square to Uranus. We'll probably spend 2 days looking at that square toward the end of the week, maybe like Thursday and Friday. So lots ahead. I'm really excited about it. Before we dive in today, I want to remind you that two of my teachers, Loka and Vidarbha, are about to offer a 12-week immersion class into the study of the Bhagavad Gita. If you go to their website, bhaktiwise.com, and click on the Study With Us tab, you can scroll down and learn all about the course. These are two of the dearest and sweetest people that I know, and they have just been really instrumental in my own spiritual growth path. They are very accommodating and hospitable in the way that they teach, really accessible, wonderful teachers that make the Bhagavad Gita really easy and fun to learn, especially if you're a total newcomer and you've never read it before, or if you have read it before but have lots of questions or want to revisit it. There's also optional mantra meditation classes you can take to learn mantra meditation connected with this class. So highly recommend it. It is by donation, so you can pay what you can afford. Suggested donation would be like $75 to $100, but whatever you can do is fine. So be sure to check that out. And I hope you guys will really enjoy that class. It's coming up soon. It starts on March 15th, goes to May 31st, meets on Tuesday nights from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Everything's recorded if you can't make it live. All right. So let's put up the real-time clock and take a look at the astrology of this week. I'm really excited about this because I love the astrology of this week. I think it's a really interesting sequence. So here's Mars and Venus, the lovers still traveling together. And what's going to be happening is by the end of the week, both Venus and Mars are making sextiles with Neptune in Pisces. And at the same time, let's look at what's happening with the moon. When we notice the moon coming in, this is by about the middle of the week, Wednesday, February 23rd, you're going to see the moon moving through its last quarter phase with the sun. Sun is just entering the sign of Pisces, so we welcome Pisces season. And as this is happening, you're going to notice that this is by Wednesday, the 23rd, Mars is making the sextile to Neptune. And then by the following day, you have Venus on Thursday, February 24th, making the sextile. And then if we go forward just a little bit more on Thursday into Friday, the 24th into the 25th, you'll see that Mercury is also making a square to Uranus. So some very dynamic activity happening here by the end of this week. I really like this as a last quarter moon energy. So first of all, I'm going to try to paint just with some broad strokes what I think all of this is about. Then we're going to focus more specifically on Venus and Mars making sextile with Neptune. So that's just kind of the order that we're going to follow today. And then later in the week, we'll spend much more time with Mercury and Uranus. So given that there's a last quarter moon coming through this week, remember that can sort of tone the entirety of the week ahead. A last quarter moon is going to be a moon that is about the completion or finality of things. Now, that applies differently to everybody. When you feel that you're at the end of something, you're coming down the home stretch of something, that's generally, that's going to be specific to a lunation cycle. So you're talking about the momentum and the developments of, say, the past month. And when you get to that last quarter moon phase, it's as though the fruits of the cycle have been completely, they've been made manifest, and the cycle is now getting ready to, fall apart and make way for a new cycle. So you get a lot of finalizing of things and completing of things, or releasing and surrendering of things, and saying, I'm letting go of something that's, purpose has been served. So there's a bit of that in the air this week overall. Then at the same time, you have Venus and Mars coming together in their conjunction, making a sextile with Neptune, while Mercury is about to make a square with Uranus. This is really interesting because it's as though whatever is entailed this week with letting go, surrendering, coming to realize that something is done, it's that beginning of the end kind of feeling. But in order to get there, it appears that there is some work being done this week, and it's really interesting to then try to contextualize what that looks like. So here's Venus and Mars making their sextile to Neptune. Let's talk about that first. Sextiles are of the nature of Venus, which means that there's a real Venusian vibe in the air. Now, Mars overtook Venus last week, and we talked about the conjunction of Mars and Venus and how unique it was that Mars was basically overcoming Venus. But now Venus is going to overcome Mars. And that's going to slowly happen over the course of the next couple of weeks. It's not until early March that that actually takes place, but it's in the process of now happening. So there's a back and forth. And this is the part where I feel like we have the really promising theme of redeeming things, solving problems, easing tensions, finding resolution. And with both of these planets sextiling Neptune, remember, sextiles being of the nature of Venus, I get the feeling of a kind of gentle persuasion that's in the air this week, that we are gently leading the bull to water. If you guys have ever heard that analogy before, it's sometimes used to describe what we're doing in meditation with the mind. You can't just pull the mind into resting. You can't just demand that it gets centered. You have to find ways of gently easing and subtly guiding the mind or the bull to the water. Now, the water is what the bull needs. It's probably even what the bull wants, but depending on the approach you take of trying to lead the bull to water, you'll succeed or fail. And the same is true for us when it comes to getting the best out of ourselves, out of relationships in the workplace, relationships with our kids and family. You want to get the best out of someone or something. It's in everybody's interest, perhaps, to come together for a common purpose or goal. Everyone has the same agenda, but you have to be really careful in how you guide that process along. If someone starts to be too demanding or too controlling, if you start to, if there's arrogance and hubris involved, and if people start to get demanding, even if the goal is ultimately good, the way in which something is done could mess the whole thing up. So one of the things that I'm looking at this week as Venus and Mars are coming together, Venus is now applying to overcome Mars. Remember, the two of them are also moving toward Pluto. There's still something that's trying to be worked out. We're trying to release something from the past, perhaps trying to move on. Remember, that last quarter moon is in the air this week, but we have to gently coax our way there. We have to find gentle, subtle ways of persuading ourselves or resistant elements within a situation that something is in their best interest, or that we'll all benefit from going in a certain direction, or whatever the case might be. So I think of the theme of gentle persuasion this week, especially around intractable people or tensions, and making sure that even though the goal might be clear and that the agenda is favorable somehow, that there has to be a careful, diplomatic, strategic way of bringing things together fluidly with a little bit of tact and subtlety and grace involved. But at the same time, the desire to finish something is in the air. And so that there could be the temptation to cut corners or try to get things done in a way that becomes impatient. Remember, this last quarter moon is in Sagittarius. Sagittarian's not particularly known for patience. So you have that fiery last quarter moon energy that's like, let's just get this done, and there's just still a little bit of a gentle coaxing that has to happen. At the same time, with Mercury about to square Uranus by the end of the week, you want to be careful that you don't wait too long or that you're too hesitant or too subtle, because you might miss a window where some kind of decisive action needs to be taken. So I get the feeling that somewhere between not being subtle, patient, careful, gentle, and easing tensions to get to that resolved place, and on the other hand, being lacking decisiveness, somewhere right in the middle is the best place. That's the best place to be this week. By the end of the week, Mercury's square to Uranus may constitute something like a breakthrough, a moment of, resolution where there's rapid development and growth. I love Mercury Uranus this week if we've been following these gentle, subtle waves of Mars, Venus, sextiling Neptune by the end in the last quarter moon. By the end of the week, Mercury hits the square to Uranus, and it's like, boom, the breakthrough has happened. We've finalized something, and there's a feeling of, okay, now we can move on. But I could see that same Mercury Uranus energy being like, okay, look, I'm tired of dancing around something, trying to make sure everyone's pleased. I'm just doing it. And maybe that's what will make things happen, because there's going to be a little too much, tiptoeing around things, walking on eggshells, being so careful and subtle. And at the end, someone just says, boom, we're done, we're doing it. And that has to be what the energy that comes through. On the other hand, you could see that same Mercury Uranus dynamic showing up. And basically someone says, I'm tired of trying to make everyone happy and pleased, and I'm just going to strong arm this thing. And then negotiations fall apart. And even though something was in everybody's best interest, there's a defiant, willful impatience that kind of blows things up. So it could kind of go either way. That's the point I'm trying to make. And overall, that's the broadest description of what I could see happening this week. Now, what we're going to do later in the week is we're also going to unpack Mercury Uranus as an archetypal combination, probably in 2 videos, because that archetypal combination on its own can yield so many different, very beautiful and interesting combinations. So as far as Mercury Uranus goes, within the context of all of the astrology of the week, this is how I'm seeing it play out. Does it act as a decisive factor in the part of some process of trying to smoothly orchestrate agreement in our lives? Yeah, it could do that. Could it also blow things up that are trying to be smoothly arranged? Yeah, it could do that too. So it's like we're trying to find just the right middle path to walk with these energies this week. Remember that the last quarter moon in Sagittarius has this feeling of the greater insights. Right? You think about, it's a Jupiter ruled sign. The sun's in a Jupiter ruled sign. The moon's in a Jupiter ruled sign. Fire and water. You get the feeling of convictions rising to the surface and being like, look at what I've learned. Look at what I've seen. Look at what I've done. Look at where I've been. And being filled with this sense of renewed faith or conviction in our guiding principles and beliefs, a sense of our ideals coming to the forefront as a kind of concluding remark or realization after a cycle, as the cycle is completing itself. It's a lot of passionate intensity this week, emotionally and sort of around our will, fire and water. So I think about that. And then I think, yeah, and then Venus, Mars are they're sort of trying to come together and smooth something out. They still got Pluto in front of them. And then you have the Mercury Uranus dynamic this week. So it's just patience, tactfulness, and decisiveness in the right order are going to win the day this week. I think it's probably the biggest week of arguably the month. But, I don't know, you could debate about that kind of stuff. But I do think it's like, this is you can always tell when the astrology is a little like it's not peaking as much, because typically I'll have other kinds of content, and it gets, by the way, I'm disappointed in all of you. For about a quarter of you watch some of the best interviews that I do with people who are talking about their journey with professional astrology, the Tao Te Ching. This is fantastic content. Like apparently about, 3/4 of the audience out there will be like, oh, it's not talking, you're not going to talk about the transits of the day. All right, peace out. So you all get detention. You get detention on my YouTube channel. I'm just kidding. But this week is one of those weeks where the astrology is really cooking. And it's going to, what's really exciting about this, though, is that the astrology really intensifies in March and April as well. As soon as Pisces season starts this year, the fireworks of the year are all planets passing through Pisces, especially the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. So I'm getting really excited because I think the next couple of months are going to be very dynamic. And it's always, as an astrologer, there's like two sides of it. I'm interested to see what's going to play out because I love reflecting on it through the lens of archetypes. That's my spiritual practice. But on the other hand, I get really excited about it because it's like, oh, I'll get to learn so much more about Pisces, about Jupiter and Neptune. You see, one of the great secrets of astrologers, let's be real, how many astrologers are there out there talking about archetypal combinations from the standpoint of having lived through very few of the sequences that they're actually talking about? In other words, how many astrologers, including myself, talked about Saturn's conjunction with Pluto, and we had all this expert advice or insight about it or pontifications about it? None of us had lived through one before. Like none of us had like, oh, we've had a Saturn conjoined with Pluto was around the, some of our elders in the community have lived through one before, a Saturn conjoined with Pluto, but most of us haven't. There's loads of people writing about the US's Pluto return. Have you ever seen a Pluto return before for a nation? Probably not. So my point, aside from being a little jerky here, my point is just very simply that I get really excited when there's a big lineup coming through, like next month in April. We've got tons of planets coming through Pisces. I'm excited because it's like, well, I'm going to learn so much more about Pisces, about Jupiter, about Neptune, about water, about double-bodied signs. It's like there's no better seminar you could take from any expert in the world than the actual experiencing of astrological transits. So if you're a student of astrology and you also love to just reflect upon big astrology, March and April are going to be really interesting. We get back into eclipse season right after that. So, I have to say February hasn't been the loudest month. There's been some big transits this month. We certainly had some in January, but to me, the fireworks of the year are like March through June, March through May. Those months are big. You also got Jupiter's going to fly through Pisces and go into Aries. That's all interesting stuff. All right. Anyway, I digress. There was a hexagram that I drew this morning asking about the astrology of the week, and it was hexagram 57, which is called the penetrating wind. And one of the ideas is that, so it's like wind following gust of wind. And there's this idea in this hexagram about smooth, subtle, consistent efforts penetrate to the core of a problem, for example. The other thing that could be there this week, whenever Mercury hits a square to Uranus, I think a lot about suddenly getting that insight where I'm like, oh, I understand something. And usually that means that I've been contemplating a problem, or there's just been like a tough nut to crack. And it's like, how do I, it's like, you guys ever eat pistachios? Those pistachios, you like break your nail trying to open it. And then Mercury Uranus comes along. It's like suddenly you just get it. Everything comes together. So I also wonder this week, with that hexagram being drawn, if there isn't something about gently, subtly coming to understand something that we've been struggling to understand, getting to the root of a problem, but also not spending too long. You don't want to just pontificate. When you start to ponder why something is happening or what the source of a problem is, and as you realize it should also lead us to some decisive actions. One of the teachings of this hexagram is also like, you gently, persistently ponder something to get to the root of a problem or to have some kind of influence over a situation, but you also have to know the decisive moment to act or do something about it. And I think that's a part of the pairing of this week. It's like the ability to get to the root of something through subtle, gentle persuasion, understanding something, but then boom, Mercury hits Uranus, and there's got to be a light bulb that goes off and some decisiveness that comes through. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting week. I'm really excited about it. And I would love to hear your stories this week. So use the hashtag grabbed and write in Mercury square Uranus, or write in Mars Neptune, or Mars Venus sextile Neptune, whatever transit you really notice. Use that hashtag grabbed and write into the comments section. Tell us about what you experience so we can start aggregating some new stories for a future episode of storytelling. In the meantime, like I said, I think tomorrow I'm going to be doing a chart demo and show you a pairing of the technique that's called zodiacal releasing, alongside of some natal analysis and transit work, with a woman who came into one of my classrooms recently and also gave me permission to anonymously use her chart in a video. So if you've never seen zodiacal releasing used, or if you wonder how to use it in practice, if you wonder some basic ways about delineating birth charts, this will be a great sort of almost like a little workshop in some advanced techniques, as well as some basic ones that we'll do. So I hope you guys will enjoy that. And then, like I said, later in the week, we're going to be taking a deeper dive into Mercury Uranus. So lots of good stuff to look forward to. Bhakti Wednesday this week, I think Loka and Vidarbha will be back to answer some questions. If you have any questions about Bhakti, yoga philosophy, you can also feel free to email us for that Q&A episode this week. Email us info@nightlightastrology.com. If you want to email a story that you're doing from the Grabbed series, you'd prefer not to put it into the comments section, you want to email us separately, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. All right, that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'm looking forward to unpacking more as we go. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.